Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly excited to share today's breakdown with you all. We're going to look at a classic, seemingly simple fable from the Fable Cottage called The Bear and the Bee. But we aren't just reading a bedtime story today. We are really analyzing the anatomy of a meltdown. We're going to use this narrative to explore a fascinating breakdown of emotional regulation, impulse control, and the massive, often hidden costs of losing your temper. Okay, let's dive right into this with a question that I want you to just keep in the back of your mind as we go. Have you ever let a minor frustration cause you to completely lose your temper? Seriously, think about it. Have you ever, say, dropped your keys or stubbed your toe or dealt with some minor inconvenience and suddenly you're experiencing a level of rage that completely outweighs the actual problem? Well, keep that feeling in mind because that brings us to the star of our explainer today, Mr. Bear. Part 1: The Hunt for Honey. Finding a solution. So, like anyone with a sudden craving, Mr. Bear has an initial problem. He looks inside his cupboard, and to his absolute dismay, he just can't find his beloved honey. He declares, "Oh no, no honey!" and decides to take immediate action. So he sets off into the forest to solve this dilemma. It's a completely normal, rational start to a problem-solving mission, right? As he wanders, he spots a beehive high up in a tree and immediately smells that sweet honey. He goes, honey. Now notice what doesn't happen here. There's no pause, there's zero risk assessment. Driven purely by his appetite, he just impulsively sticks his giant paw right into the beehive without a second thought. Part 2: The First Sting. Establishing a clear boundary. Now, what's really interesting about this clash is that a beehive is not just an unguarded jar of free honey, right? It's someone's home. So conflict arises immediately. Mr. Bear hears a buzzing sound, and a single bee flies out. The bee establishes a very clear, very reasonable boundary, telling the bear, "Hey bear, go away." Look at the stark contrast between these two perspectives. Mr. Bear gets profoundly annoyed, relying completely on his status and size. He thinks he's bigger, he's stronger, and therefore, he can just do whatever he wants. He literally tells the bee to buzz off. On the flip side, we have the bee's reality. The bee isn't intimidated by size or ego. It's simply defending its territory with a direct, simple command. It is a classic clash between entitled ego and grounded reality. So how does reality actually respond to Mr. Bear's ego? With exactly one consequence. When Mr. Bear completely dismisses the bee and arrogantly shoves his paw right back into that hive, he gets a sudden, sharp zing, a physical wake-up call. The bee stings him exactly one time, right on the tip of his nose. Part 3: The Breaking Point. Losing control. This right here is where the story shifts from a simple foraging trip into a real psychological study of anger. That sudden, acute physical pain from a single sting completely short-circuits Mr. Bear's rational thinking. He yells about his nose and growls, "Ooh, I'm so angry." He's no longer thinking about getting honey. He is totally consumed by immediate, blinding retaliation. Let's map out how this rapid escalation builds. First, he starts off just annoyed by the bee's boundary. Then, after the sting, he gets angrier and angrier. He finds a big stick, yelling that he's going to squash the bee, swinging wildly and fruitlessly at this fast little insect. Finally, when the bee tactically retreats into the hive, Mr. Bear completely loses his mind. Thinking he has the bee trapped, he swings his stick and smashes the entire hive to pieces. Smash, smash, smash. He literally destroys the bee's home just to settle a score. Part 4: Painful Consequences. Thousands of bees. But nature and reality have a way of pushing back, don't they? As the hive lies in pieces on the forest floor, Mr. Bear hears a strange sound. It starts quiet, but it gets louder and louder. It's a menacing, collective buzzing. From the wreckage of the smashed hive, thousands of bees emerge. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer chaotic fallout of his lack of emotional control. It starts on his ear, then his elbow. The massive swarm chases a terrified Mr. Bear through the forest, stinging him relentlessly on his arms, his legs, his hands, and again, especially on his poor nose. What started as one tiny sting from one bee has multiplied into thousands of stings, all because he chose destruction over simply walking away. Part 5: The Bitter Irony. Running home. Finally, the chase ends. A totally defeated, agonizingly swollen and crying Mr. Bear runs all the way home. He practically dives inside and slams the door shut behind him. And as he sits there crying and counting his endless bee stings, Mrs. Bear calmly treats his wounds. She looks at him and says, "You lost your temper." This quote from Mrs. Bear is incredibly revealing for us as the audience. By pointing that out, it tells us that this explosive lack of emotional control isn't some rare, one-off event. It's a recurring, destructive pattern for Mr. Bear. He clearly has a habit of letting minor frustrations turn into major catastrophes. But then, she drops the ultimate punchline of the entire story. She casually adds, "Also, we have honey in the cupboard. It's behind the flower." Just think about the weight of that statement. Mr. Bear's entire violent, agonizing, humiliating ordeal in the forest was completely 100% unnecessary. The very thing he wanted was sitting safely in his own kitchen the entire time, just slightly out of view. Part 6, the moral of the story. Conclusion. So, you might be wondering, why are we analyzing a children's fable? Well, because this seemingly simple story carries a heavy, universally applicable truth about human behavior. We've just watched a minor inconvenience, not seeing a jar immediately, getting pricked on the nose, snowball into total self-inflicted disaster purely because of unchecked anger. So the crucial point is, a hot temper always gets you in trouble. When we allow ego and rage to take the wheel, we develop tunnel vision. We focus entirely on destroying the bee that annoyed us, and in the process, we smash the very hive of our own peace and stability. More importantly, blind rage prevents us from seeing the easy, painless solutions that are often right in front of us, or, just behind the flower in the cupboard. I want to leave you with a thought to really reflect on today. How do you manage your own beehive smashing moments? When that one single bee stings you in your daily life, whether it's a rude email, a bad traffic jam, or a misplaced item, do you pause, assess the reality, and walk away? Or do you grab a stick and start swinging, making the situation 1,000 times worse? The next time you feel that hot temper rising, remember Mr. Bear, take a deep breath, and maybe double-check your own cupboards first. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you some valuable tools for thought.